This is our second plenary session of the conference, and we open this session with a conversation between Maria Ressa and Philip Chetwynd. Maria Ressa received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2021. As the co-founder and CEO of Rappler, a digital news platform, Ressa is a leading voice on the societal implications of AI on free expression and accountability. As vice chair of the United Nations Internet Governance Forum and a 2023-24 Carnegie Distinguished Fellow at Columbia University's Institute for Global Politics, Ressa has examined governance frameworks for AI. Her research and advocacy highlight the critical need for ethical AI development to protect democratic values. Philip Chetwynd is the global news director of Agence France-Presse, AFP, leading the agency's 1,700 journalists based in some 150 countries. He is responsible for driving the digital transformation of the company. Chetwynd also sits on the board of Reporters Without Borders and is a member of the World Editors Forum. Maria and Philip.
Hello. I can't decide whether to use that mic or this one. I'm too short. It's better here, yes? Can I use this mic? And we're just, it's been fantastic with the morning, and thank you so much for, I was telling Phil, I'm loving the geekiness of everything. But now I'm going to tell you, from the engineer and the science and the creators of this, what's happened to us? How does it play out in the real world? I'll give you real world examples. And then the question I have, which I'm sure he's going to throw at you and at me, is, whom can we trust with this technology that gives us the power of gods? I'm going to go through this fast, okay? Yay, thanks, David, thank you. All right, so everything here, data included, is in How to Stand Up to a Dictator. It came out 1 week before ChatGPT, and then like the next day after ChatGPT came out, someone in Silicon Valley, because I was in San Francisco doing the launch, came up to me with the ChatGPT summary of my book. But it's been translated to maybe 25 different countries. What's fascinating is what's happened to us in the Philippines is now coming for all of you. And of course, it's there in America now. The French translation of the book is the most aggressive. Thank you, France. It's How to Stand Up to a Dictator. It says, resist the dictators. This is Japanese. The Japanese one was very interesting. It doesn't have anything to do with dictators. It's about social media. So the title reflects the culture. South Korean, Mandarin, it's in Mandarin as well. This is fascinating to me. In Georgia, I was in Georgia last year. Those protests began in April, and they are in their 60-plus days now of consecutive days of protests. They're carrying my book. The journalists who have been beaten, who are now in jail. Mizia Amaglobeli is in her 20-something day of a hunger protest, where she just said she's not protesting for herself, but she said that she's in jail, and she said, if I don't do anything, then I'm part of it. Silence is consent. And this is coming out next month. Mongolia, that little country between China and Russia. Good place. So I'll just remind you what machine learning and AI did to our public information ecosystem, right? The science you guys did then went to creating a casino, an addictive casino so that we can carry it everywhere in our pockets. And it is this opportunity, unpredictable rewards, and then the quick repeatability of it. What's happened? What did it do? Well, oh, wow. Yeah, it's personal, the shift, and finally the US Surgeon General in last year, 2023, 2024, began to talk about the impact on the next generation, on teenagers, increased sleeplessness among young girls, eating disorders, increased suicides, right? The research is there. You have done it. Please pull it all together. And then beyond that, the epidemic of loneliness. Vivek Murthy, outgoing, said, how do you solve the epidemic of loneliness, which basically kind of personalizes? So I say personalization is the primary thing. Your goal with personalization was to please your user. But what it did is it tore our shared reality apart. Because if every single person in this room has their own personalized reality, this would be an insane asylum, right? I mean, if you really think about it. And then here's the last part. Engineers always say, and the big tech companies always say, no, we need to roll it out. We need to roll it out because it's emergent behavior, the emergent behavior of people, right? It's how we use the tech, what you have created, and that then creates this feedback loop, a network effect. But here's the problem. What if the longer term, what if we develop ADHD? Research shows that that's kind of what's happening. I feel it. What if it makes us more violent? What if the synapses of the neuron traveling in the synapses of our brain, which is supposed to go straight, right? This is a study that came out where they said that, if you're having an intense conversation with somebody, and then you pick up your phone because it's buzzing in your pocket, and you're talking and you look down, it'll take 20 minutes to get back to that same intensity of focus and concentration. What if we train the neuron to it's supposed to go straight and it turns right, and it turns right again, and it keeps turning right? Sorry, yes, it's not normal. So emergent behavior is different, right? And the shortened attention spans is the easy one. What are some of the other things? The Friends of Friends algorithm is an algorithm for growth that all social media companies used in my country, in your country. What it did in 2016, which is when the political dominoes began to fall, right? What are we talking about? When the gatekeeping powers, the distribution powers moved from news organizations to tech, to you. And when that happened, that was around 2014. It took 2 years before the political dominoes began to fall. May 2016, Duterte in the Philippines was elected. And then about a month later, you had Brexit. And then look at all the elections that year, November, the first Trump administration. France was really lucky because France had more power than the Philippines. The Macron campaign pointed out that there were these information operations happening, and Facebook took down 30,000 to 50,000 fake accounts, right? So all of these things are there, but let's just talk about the impact, because now we have years of data that show us. First question, electoral integrity. We talked earlier about agency. Joshua mentioned agency, right? Do you still have agency if you are on this device, on the platforms? And what it has shown is that in almost every election around the world, where people get their, and I'm going to put rabbit ears, news is how they vote, right? So information operations, again. So what happens? Let's jump to December 2024, which is when Romania, little country Romania, had their elections and then voided it because of Kremlin interference in social media. Imagine if the UK did that in 2016, voided it, or the US in the 2016 elections, because all of that data was released and given to the Senate Intelligence Committee at the December 2018. Camille Francois, who works with me in the Innovation Lab at the Institute of Global Politics at Columbia University, was one of the ones who went through that data. The evidence is there. What do we do about it? So, electoral integrity, right? Look at where the world is. As of last year, 71% of the world is under authoritarian rule, and the cells of a democracy, the individual voters, are electing illiberal leaders democratically. And part of that is because the platform, social media, our public information ecosystem is designed to trigger our emotions. It hacks our biology, right? As of 2018, MIT said that lies spread 6 times faster. That was before Elon Musk bought Twitter. What do you think happened after that, right? And in the Philippines in 2017, we had all our data, and we showed that if you use fear, anger, and hate, that it spreads even faster. That's the virality. It goes 2 ways, right? There's the viral spread, and then there's the meta-narrative spread, where you bury the meta-narrative, and then you pound it opportunistically every single time the news allows. An example of that is Ukraine, right? In 2014, Russia ceded the meta-narrative that allowed it to annex Crimea. And in 2022, the same meta-narrative was used by Putin to invade Ukraine itself. Sorry, I'm a geek on this stuff because it's fascinating if it wasn't happening to us. And then the last one, online violence is real-world violence. You've seen this. I spent the last part of my career with CNN tracking terrorist networks in Southeast Asia. What radicalized people and allowed them to become extremists and terrorists, that process is now unleashed to the public. So online violence is real-world violence, and I found my way to that. Let me keep going. So about 2.5 years ago, I gave up on big tech. Hi, are you Facebook? Yes. Rappler is also a partner of every single one of the tech companies, including OpenAI. You'll see it on our site. But if you take a look at this, try this. This is a Matrix protocol chat app that we built on top of the Matrix protocol. The Matrix protocol, countries that care about data privacy, France, Germany, Taiwan are some of the ones, they put their websites on the Matrix protocol. And what we did in time for our May elections, we rolled this out last year to the Philippines, is instead of throwing people back to insidious manipulation, we put our community together on the Matrix protocol chat app. I'll take you through that more later. Let me quickly, give me a time. Yes, I'm looking at it. Let me quickly take you through what I lived through. In 2016, so this is 2016, I wrote 2 of the 3 stories that got us targeted. I wrote Propaganda War, Weaponizing the Internet, and How Facebook Algorithms Impact Democracy. This is before the US elections. I think this was September or October. And then my co-founder wrote Fake Accounts, Manufactured Reality on Social Media. What we found when we looked at the data at the granular level is that 26 fake accounts, a sock puppet network, can influence up to 3 million others. Right? Look how cheap that is. 26 fake accounts can change your view of the world, can manipulate you up to 3 million others. That was shocking. It was like looking into the heart of darkness. This is the network. So we took the networks and mapped it. This is the first of more than 12 iterations. This is the network that attacked journalists, human rights activists, opposition politicians. It was so organized that they broke it down by demographics. If you are wealthy and part of the thinking class, it would be this one. It doesn't show. So Motherland, SAS, thinking Pinoy is the middle class, and Mocha Uson is like a more salacious Katy Perry. Mocha Uson was a singer-dancer. She had the Mocha Girls, and she grew her Facebook page by having Sunday morning pillow fights with the Mocha Girls. So you can kind of see where it went, right? These are the kinds of things I got once we published that story. Everything about me, like essentially they're looking for a weakness, a vulnerability, because this is not a free speech issue, it's a distribution issue. And the way I think about it is that this exponential pounding of you is meant to stifle you, is meant to shut you down, and it works. There's things like this, so every time we do an investigative report or we win an award, this floods Facebook. For 6 years in a row, Filipinos spent the most time online and on social media globally until 2021. So we literally were the guinea pigs. Okay, so sorry, don't drink, don't eat. The dehumanization moves, right? An engineer couldn't fathom that this would come out, right? My mom was the first one to send this to me. And it took maybe 5 months before Facebook and Twitter took it down. It still pops up every now and then. Boy, I have some rage here. Anyway, so what was my nickname? They called me Scrotum Face. And then when Facebook and Twitter took it down, oh yeah, you know why? I have dry skin. I have eczema. But that's a good thing, I guess, because, I'm not corrupt. They couldn't hit anything else, so I'm Scrotum Face. Eczema, okay, I'll take it. But it took me a long time to be able to show you that, right? But that dehumanization in the real world opens the door to violence. So during this time period, I've had to increase security for Rappler. It's a news group in the Philippines, co-founded it in 2012. We have about 120 people, not like Phil with 1,000, so 10 times more than us. But I increased security 6 times in 6 months. Let's go. They're very creative. Once the social media platforms took it down, Vogue PH is a Facebook page. So then 1,000 Cuts, which is a PBS Frontline documentary, came out. So then they did this. You notice? It's creative. It's the only thing you could say, right? And you do have to laugh, especially in the middle of it. Anyway, so what did we do? Data. Because guess what? It's a good thing when you're the target. You don't have to ask anyone else for the data. It all comes to you. So I took it, we mapped it, and then we were essentially alpha partners of Facebook, so we created a database for our social media team. When it turns red, it means that has been pounded more than 10 times. So that was a low threshold, right? But we were looking for something called astroturfing. And look at what happened in October 2016. We finally got all the data. October 2016 is soon after Duterte took office. And you can see, this is a Facebook page of Sally Matay. And you can see that it is a cut and paste, right? This is called astroturfing. Cut and paste, cut and paste. So at least my social media team knows not to interact with it. And then we took, so you can look at ways to look at the data. You can map the data. This is 2017 when, by the way, FT wrote about how incumbent governments now are getting kicked out, right? Please look at the role technology played in that. Right? Because in almost every country, pro-human rights, pro-democracy groups tend to A, be lost, and 2, when you're on social media, if you want to lie, if you want to pound fear, hate, and anger, you get wider distribution. Right? So what does that do? This is 2017 in the Philippines, Rappler. The circles are eigenvector centrality, so the larger the circle, the larger its influence. But you can see inside the yellow circle, those are the ones trying to hold the line on facts. We had other ways that, that the alternative realities happened. And you can see the difference here. And again, I can share the data with you as well as the maps, and it's interactive. The only time we were able to, actually it's not the only now, the first time we were able to actually do almost a 50-50 split between, I would say, pro-reality and then alternative reality is this day. It's February 12th. It was the day I was arrested. And you can see news organizations. So again, this was early. This was 2019. And you can see the news organizations in yellow up top and then kind of the pseudo news. In every one of our countries, it's slightly different, but the tactics are the same. Also, the good thing that happened, every time I kept getting arrested, our crowdfunding increased. So my sales team really liked it. I just kept telling them this is not a sustainable business model. All right, so lastly, I just want to leave you with, I'm not alone. This is UNESCO in 2022. Look at the trends that attacks women journalists, women politicians, you can extend it, but 73% of the women journalists that interviewed, surveyed by ICFJ, the International Center for Journalists, experienced online abuse. Of that, 25% received threats of physical violence, and of that, 20% were hit with real-world violence, right? The two fracture lines in every society, in every country, regardless of culture or language, the two fracture lines pounded open by info ops are gender and race, right? So you look at the US elections where it's inflation or immigration. We did a big study in the US before the US elections. Those are all code words for race. Anyway, I'll quickly go through. I just want to show you this deep fake. This is all before the deep fakes came in, right? What I'll show you now is, and I hope to get further on this because we really do have to stop the impunity, the Russian scam network. Here you go. Let me show you the first one. There've been so many of them now, including my last one, I think, is where I'm telling people with diabetes not to take their insulin. Throw out your insulin. Don't follow that. That wasn't me. Anyway, here we go.
Today, I want to share one of my big secrets. What helped me to become a successful person is to quickly jump into new opportunities without any hesitation. And right now, my #1 source of income is a new automated cryptocurrency trading program. This is the biggest opportunity I've seen in my entire life to make a big fortune quickly. You can invest 14,500 Philippine pesos and earn from 120,000 monthly without much labor. I urge everyone to check this out before the banks shut down this platform.
I didn't say that, right? Don't buy crypto. Anyway, this is 2023. By 2023, the big tech platforms, Facebook and Google, began taking news out of your feeds. Right? There are only 3 ways that news organizations get traffic, get you on our sites. It's Facebook, search, or direct. Facebook literally choked traffic, 50 to 85% of the traffic gone to news sites. And then Google in 2023 began search generative experiments in 125 countries. It rolled it out. Gemini, you heard from this morning. It rolled it out right before the US elections, and that meant less news in your feed, right? And then finally, the last one, this is Cory Doctorow's phrase, the enshittification of the internet. Because now that you've created these tools that people can create whatever they want, this is where we're headed. That's why we built the Matrix Protocol chat app. Let me leave it with, click again. Doesn't want to click. Please click. Yeah, really doesn't want to click. Facebook doesn't like me. It's not Facebook, it's OECD. Yeah, just click through. I'll pass this on. I just want to quickly show you, because I give you all the bad news. Can you please click? Oh, my computer doesn't. It's tired. Well, I'll leave it there, because I think it would be great to have a conversation. I just want to tell you, please, 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 be careful. You're building things. And yes, I truly love the tech. I wanted to be Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock combined, you know. But the tech, and I think I asked Joshua earlier, he was saying, you know, in order to really be safe, it would be best to hold back on this, but he was almost sheepish about it. There's going to be real world harms. I think that the academics can play deep-minded, fantastic stuff, but when you roll it out to the public, there are going to be costs. Are you ready to pay those costs? We'll leave it there. I'll just say one last thing here, right? We already know that the online violence and real-world violence, because in 2018, in my part of the world, in Myanmar, the UN sent a team, Meta sent a team to Myanmar, and they both came back with the same decision, which is Facebook played a role in genocide. Oh, by the way, they took out fact-checking now, right? We know this. Hello. I'll give it to you.
Thanks, Maria. As always, incredibly inspiring for my industry. I'm so happy to have such an amazing champion of what we do, or what we are trying to do. I wanted to go back to the beginning of Rappler, because I remember visiting Rappler in 2012, and I think this is an important point, because you're a technology optimist, right? And when
I used to be.
And when we came in 2012, I remember it was right at the beginning of the social media revolution, right? And it was super positive journalism, right? We were all on Twitter. This was
and
really going to do a lot. And
yeah.
you know, we drank the Kool-Aid at that point, right? We wanted it to work, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that Rappler couldn't have existed without Facebook at that point, right? And part of the reason we grew as fast as we did, so I used to manage the largest news organization in the Philippines, and then here I am with a little startup with 12 people, and our reporters would go out and do the live stream before live streaming happened, right? Before they went live. And I loved this stuff because I thought social network analysis, that we can spread the good. Up until 2016, I didn't realize how the worst of humanity could actually be exploited.
Right. And so if we now fast forward to where we are now, so if we take the structure of this conversation is the state of what I would call the information ecosystem. We like to talk about the media, but the alternative information ecosystem is maybe bigger than the media now, maybe. Yeah. It's a huge sludge of various different types of things. At this point in time, how weak is that information system? We have media, the business model has been done for a long time, a real difficulty. As you say, social media traffic collapsed. We have basically social media algorithms deprioritizing good content. You have fact-based information removed from platforms. And just at this moment, along comes Gen AI, right? So where are we at? How big is the emergency for what I would call information news journalism at this point?
Existential, right? And I will say this, like at the 2021 Nobel lecture, I pointed to 2024 as a tipping point globally, because last year we had 74 elections, so about half the world voted, and our information ecosystem, what's the status of it? It's corrupted, right? I don't know if it's the same as you. I became a journalist because information is power, right? We could see that go through every society. And unfortunately, the technology that has, it's the spark that set the tinder on fire. The technology that we're using, none of this is anchored in facts, right? So we built our own chatbot using a data lake and GraphRag to anchor it. We were able to, because we zoomed in, right? The engineers and the tech guys are zooming so fast because you're looking for ways to make more money, to monetize it. But if you actually go down, if you care about the public information ecosystem, facts are incredibly important. In the Philippines, we have an average of 20 typhoons every year. And people look to us to find out where they can go so they will be safe. Your countries are going through this now. It isn't like the old days. And so if you do not, California fires, exploited by disinformation as well, and the political jostling for power when people need to know where they will be safe. This is a safety issue. So what's the state of our public information ecosystem? Since we're in Paris, the Paris mayor, Anne Hidalgo, on the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, got off Twitter because she called it the human sewer. It's turned the incentive structure of the world upside down, right? Right now you're rewarded for lying. Imagine if you tell your child, go lie, I'll reward you. Keep lying. That's our world today.
And then at this point, and here, we are having a conversation about the ethical guardrails for the future as we roll this out. But then we have to look back at the fact that this stuff has already been rolled out, and how did that go? How did Facebook or platforms or whoever they were doing, how did they use technology, and did they do it responsibly, and how's it going for us?
What's the answer? We've been through this before, and the same companies are coming at it again. I guess my question is, and again, from this morning, I really looked at how can we send out the agents if we don't have guardrails? And it's existential. So when I say it's existential for journalists, that means it's existential for democracy, right? That's what this year is. And if you don't have democracy, then what do we have? This is within your power. You already know the answer because Phil also does the stories, but how can we trust the same companies that did what they've just done and have refused to acknowledge it? And have refused to literally change the design? Everything else, frankly, fact-checking, this international fact-checking network, we're part of that, but that's a Band-Aid. What they needed to do was to change the design. And if you change the design, then we have something sustainable.
Well, as you say, if we're going to have something sustainable as an information ecosystem, there needs to be some kind of commitment to a fact-based universe. We don't always get our facts right, but we at least aspire to get our facts right.
And we're accountable, like literally. I mean, I have many cases now that I didn't deserve, but you hold journalists accountable. I guess that's the other part. When you roll it out to the public, are you going to be are you accountable? Are there laws to hold you accountable, right? I use this example all the time. Imagine if, we're drug companies. We're a drug company, and I've just decided, like those software companies, I'm going to go and test drug A on this side of the room and drug B on this side of the room. Oh, drug A people, you died? So sorry. The airplane, the door that fell off the airplane, there were consequences to that company. There are no consequences.
So, given where we are, and given, as you say, those same actors hold an interesting position at this point going forward for us all, right? What do we do? How do we approach that?
Every day that democratic governments don't put the legislation in place, they get weaker. Every day that if you're an American working in a company right now that is affected by all the changes that are there, every day that you do not act, you lose more and more of your power. I know this from the Philippines, right? And our phrase was, you have to hold the line. This is the line of the Constitution, and you're going to have to bulldoze us to go through. I didn't go to jail, thank God. It's wood. But, I wonder who will save America? Who will save? This is the time when citizens in every country need to actually act. Because if we don't, if there is no push from the society, then power and money win. Did anyone mention Elon Musk?
So concretely, what does that mean? We're into this period of anti-regulation, I would say. There's a global wave against regulation. Regulation, along with facts and climate change, have become woke.
God, guys.
So what do we do? I mean, the EU has obviously tabled legislation both in terms of monitoring the technology companies, the Digital Services Act and the AI Act. Is that going to hold? Is that a model to follow?
I think you have to realize that this is like termites eating wood. So you're going to have in France elections. Canada will have elections, right? And the people who will be voting are affected by information operations, right? So this is a safety issue. I think we need to demand that there shouldn't be lead in our paint, that we shouldn't be insidiously manipulated, that like Estonia, that we actually have control of our data. It does go down to data. I'll give you a concrete example, and the other reason I really wanted to come is this is the time of, one person said this last night, radical collaboration. This is the time to create now. So we gave you all the bad news, but here's the part that is exciting. And I'll use as an example something that we did at Columbia University. Private sector, academe, news organizations, right? What we did is a year ago, coming from France, President Macron created a group called États Généraux, and in French, of information. Camille, where are you? You should say this. États Généraux, which took 9 months to go through France, to talk to the people about what do you want for this AI? What role will it play in society? Then we took that, and with Columbia University at CIPA and with Sciences Po, we created, one of the projects was a Trust and Safety Tools Consortium. Remember, the trust and safety people in every one of the industries, in every one of these companies, are low men on the totem pole. I used to tell Camille Francois, there she is, now I see you. Camille, I used to say, Camille created an AA, an Alcoholics Anonymous for trust and safety people, where they came together and they worked together. And it included people like Jan LeCun, and then they came up with a baseline of safety for kids. And what will happen now is this was incubated inside Columbia University. But can I say this? But it's soon to be, on Monday, don't tweet yet, but it will be part of, it now will become an NGO that will build trust and safety tools that will be open source. That means anyone who is building can use this. That means that you will have instead of waiting for governments to come up with legislation, that industry and academe, they had 2 academic papers, more coming out, and now it will build tools for all of us. That's one thing.
So you're thinking that legislation's not going to come?
It's got to come faster, guys.
Well, isn't there another question about even when there is legislation? If you took the Digital Services Act, the EU Digital Services Act, it's pretty clear that X would be in contravention of the Digital Services Act. I think they've had 2 warnings. Will they actually follow through on that, for example?
EU, please make them. Because what's at stake in the world today, whether you're in technology or geopolitics, is impunity, right? Whether you are Putin or Elon Musk, the world has to prove that rule of law exists. It's a simple thing.
And so if we do get through the next 6 months...
oh my God.
What does a sort of safe and ethical journalism environment look like?
So we've been extremely weakened. How many people here trust journalists? Oh, thank God.
They have to say that.
You don't have to, but you see, that's part of it, right? So what is it? So yes, we're not perfect. Journalists aren't perfect. And because it's become commodified and we were in a distribution system that rewarded, frankly, crappy journalism, it got worse, right? So it all played into each other. But what's the future like? Investigative journalism is a necessity for democracy. If you don't have that, absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? I mean, and maybe we all want a fascist government. I don't know.
Yeah, and already there are already, to be upbeat, there are already amazing journalism being done with AI-related tools, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalism. There is a real capacity for these tools, in terms of developing investigative reporting to a much higher level than we have, right?
Well, the other thing is, again, we need engineers to help us anchor the tech in facts, right? So it took us, little Rappler in the Philippines, 3 months to be able to get that. I call it an error rate, but I think they say it's a hallucination, right? All this flattening of meaning, this is going to happen. It's an error rate. It's false. And you don't want to give false information if you're a news organization. So now it's roughly at 16% if you're using big tech, but we've tried to localize it. We have it down to 2%, but even 2% is not acceptable. Having said that, Yosha Benjo last night said, oh, but Maria, is a call center 98% accurate all the time? And I actually just responded by saying, well, if they're wrong, they're accountable for it, right? So I think that's part of it. So what's the future like? This is the battle. This is the year. This is the year. So if you're an engineer, please help us. If you're not an engineer and you're a journalist, fight on. This is it. We have to create it better than it is, and it's going to be extremely challenging. We all see the news every day.
I think that's a good place to open the floor to questions. So, please, sir. There's a lady at the back there.
Thank you for this wonderful presentation. My name is also Maria. I am a professor, civil servant of Norway. I would like to ask something very of your opinion. Is it the case that we created the space for all of this technological sludge to exist when we actively defunded, that's probably not pronounced correctly, local journalism? So we use technology as a way to defund local journalism in a lot of places, not in Norway, but in a lot of places. And now we see news deserts when there is no local journalism. And it's specifically these places that are the most, I don't know, the fodder of the evil technological use to corrupt information. Thank you.
Well, the easy answer here is that these are cascading failures, right? The failure of the business model. I think last year, we've never seen as many journalists fired, losing their jobs as last year. And this year may beat last year. So the young journalists here keep on. But so one of the cascading failures is that there's just no business model. We cannot pay our people. Duterte, so here's an upside. When the Philippine government under Rodrigo Duterte began attacking us, they told all our advertisers to stop advertising. That's a really efficient way to get money away and try to shut us down. But what that forced us to do was to find an alternative business model. And we found that in actually some of the maps that you see. We created a consultancy that maps the information ecosystem. And those companies who were advertisers, who were afraid to advertise in Rappler, were our clients, right? So news deserts. Here's the goal of every news organization, and this is where we can be better at it. We need to form communities of action. That's the elevator pitch of Rappler in 2012. We build communities of action, and the food we feed our communities is journalism. And again, no offense to influencers or content creators. The standards and ethics of journalism are important. On the news deserts, how do we deal with that? I don't have Mr. Big Media. How do you deal with that?
No, I think one thing that people have to understand at this point in time is the scale of the emergency and the question for society to ask itself. Okay, you don't like journalism, you don't trust journalism, okay, take it away and what do you have? You know, Elon Musk is all the time on Twitter saying that we are the media now, that you can have an opinion sitting in your bedroom and write 300 words and that is the media. Well, just wait until you don't have it and you'll understand then what fundamental role it plays in society every day. And we're at that point where people should be asking that question, I believe.
But this is kind of like in America when everyone's saying, well, just wait until Donald Trump becomes president. But on this one, what I would say is that this is an inflection point for the world. And if at the Cannes Lionheart last year, I came on stage after Elon Musk on the same stage. I would have loved to have interviewed him. But, you know, he did say, and look, I am on all these platforms because how can you not be if you're a journalist? Grok will pull things together. It's just not accountable if it's wrong, right? So what happens when there's no one on the ground? When there's no one you can trust? I forgot, that's the big thing. Trust is gone. So that's the question, back to your question of, do you trust? I can trust the engineer. I would love you to have a code like we do, or maybe even like civil engineers are accountable for the for the bridges they build, right? Why are software engineers not accountable for your immense power to manipulate us or to inspire joy?
Another question, just here at the front.
Thank you very much. My name is Amir Benifatimi. You mentioned answers through technology and probably committees of action. But if we remove these two out of the equation temporarily, not that we want to remove them, where do you think from a legislative or regulatory perspective there could be positive incentives to promote trust in information?
I've been part of a lot of these things over the last 8 years. I sit as vice chair of the leadership panel for the Internet Governance Forum, so the UN. Yesterday we just had a meeting and I kept pushing the UN needs to do more, but it's actually not yet, right? Let me respond to your question. I think transparency, accountability. Transparency and accountability are the two things that are missing, right? I used to say in the US it was Section 230 of the 1996 Communications Decency Act because the algorithms are editorial choices. You just build them into the machine, right? You choose, but you're not responsible the same way we are if you deploy the algorithms. So, and then here's the other part is that our tax dollars, the taxpayers and the government are paying for those harms. Those harms are real. In terms of gender, I cannot begin to tell you how so many, the women's movement has been pushed back decades. But let me keep responding to your question. So that's the first. The other one was something that Joshua Benjo mentioned to us, which I loved, insurance. Have them get insurance. But would an insurer actually do insurance for rolling out something that hasn't been tested? Other things I really like, Camille teaches me a lot. In terms of like working inside the industry, but something like this. What's our baseline? Okay, you don't want to lose that much money, but work with everyone else in the industry so you at least have a baseline for harm, right? And then be transparent about it. That's what you will see in the announcement on Monday. There's so much that is in the power of the tech companies. And I think partly there's a lack of understanding of the role of journalism. And then there's also an overwhelming focus on profit. Dimitri and I, in 2022, came up with a 10-point action plan, largely focused on the EU, because the EU was actually the only one. And please don't join the bandwagon hitting your politicians for doing this. It isn't about whether or not you can be innovative. You can be both innovative and safe at the same time, right? It's not about innovation over safety. So what did we do? 300 Nobel laureates, civil society groups, 300 signed on that same day. First, stop surveillance for profit. Second, stop coded bias. Because, and I'm not the first to say this, it's digital colonialism, right? Colonialism didn't die, it just moved online. We in the Global South are the ones cleaning up the technology that you've created. We were the content moderators, the 2 countries where they did it, and Manila was one. And then the third, sorry, uncoded bias, what do I mean by that? If you are a woman, LGBTQ+, if you are marginalized in any way in the real world, you're further marginalized online. And you don't have respite because it's a machine, right? And then the third one, this goes back to us, journalism as an antidote to tyranny. And I think the last part that connects with this is the role of faith groups. I was just at the Vatican to kick off the Jubilee, the end of January, where Pope Francis, so 1.5 billion Catholics. But before that, I was in a Jewish temple in LA where it was an interfaith group, right? When our technology emphasizes the worst of humanity, encourages and incites this thing, I always say, like, think there's an angel on this side, a devil on this side, and the angel, my Catholic roots, the angel tells you, don't do it, be fair, think about someone else, think about the other person, and then the devil says, do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. What social media did was it kicked the angel off your shoulder and it grew the devil and gave it a direct line into your nervous system. So that last part, the last one of the 3 points, is journalism as an antidote to tyranny. Because
it's obvious, yeah. Another question. The lady over there on the right.
Thank you, Maria, for the...
yes, okay. Please.
I'm Teddy from Uganda, Africa. Thank you so much for the elaborate presentation and discussion. I am curious to see how Africa fits in this discussion, because I understand we have also been trying to break down that generic ways of ruling and having everyone access social media and talk like openly, like us becoming the media, has been a big tool. And from your discussion, I'm hearing elements of it should be particular people to communicate rather than the actual people on the ground. So as we move forward, as we have many voices on these social media platforms, how do we come to an agreement on who should be right, on who should we follow, whose ideas are much better than the other, and who is ethical, generally speaking, at that point?
Fantastic, broad question, but let me try to stab at it, right? To take a stab. I was in South Africa a lot last year, and part of it was the 30th anniversary of South African democracy, and then the 40th anniversary of Desmond Tutu's Nobel Prize. And we gathered from Africa all of different voices and civil society groups, largely. I chair the World Movement for Democracy. And when we were there, here are the competing things in there. In almost every society, what was happening? Zimbabwe had fallen apart, right? There was conflict there already. Next door, let me break it down into two. There is the electoral there are electoral questions that are shifting into violence, and then there's the information warfare that is happening there. In South Africa itself, Chinese information operations and Russian information operations. This is still connected with power and money. I say all of that as background, in the same way that in the Philippines, Chinese information operations and Chinese intelligence and Chinese spies have ramped up. Why? Because of it, we call it the West Philippine Sea, but it's the South China Sea. That's the conflict, right? If the levels of impunity get to a point where China decides to move, it has already moved in the West Philippine Sea and the South China Sea. All of that is in context to the economics that go into each of the country. The right answer to your question is we have always had the power to build our own communities, right? I come from a country where, I mean, the quick answer to our history is 300 years in a convent and 50 years in Hollywood. We were colonized by Spain for 300 years and by America for 50 years. So some people will say, well, it's like, how can we have agency? Because that is there. I'm just saying, well, we build from where we are. So the tough part with Africa is, like us, you're also the sanitizer of the tech. Kenya, Nigeria, and the people are manipulated in the same way we are. So your question isn't, there's so many nuances in it. There isn't a quick answer. I will say that we're trying to partner with some groups to go into the Matrix Protocol. Because like in every other country, education becomes another problem. I didn't get to show you the map of how history in my country was changed in front of our eyes through information operations, right? It went from 2012, when Ferdinand Marcos I was kicked out in a people power revolt in 1986, stealing $10 billion. But by 2022, his only son and namesake is overwhelmingly elected president. And part of that is because we watched over time and we mapped it. Oh yeah, you found it. Oh my God. So you can see this, right? The orange, so 2012 is the first one, and 2022, the elections, is this last one. So look at the orange are news organizations and fact-checking groups. The green is the disinformation, right? So literally, this is one way to explain the Marcos wealth, that they just found gold, you know? And so over time, you can see that the one in the middle here is the pandemic year. Look at the disinformation, how large the green was. And then we began to kind of collaborate together as fact checkers and news organizations in 2021, and you saw the orange grow. This is happening in every one of your countries on social media. It's happening in Africa. So who owns our history? We're being manipulated. I want agency back.
Now, I know there are lots more questions, but I'm getting anxious looks from our hosts. So I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap it up there. So if we can just thank Maria for a fantastic cover.